Welcome to Accessible, the podcast that opens the door to disability leaders and their ideas. I'm George Gatto.
And I'm Amelia Reigard.
We are doing something a little different in this special series called Voices of the Network. Over the next few episodes, we will highlight university centers on disability, which are currently facing funding uncertainty in the proposed 2026 federal budget.
We'll explore how these programs came to be, their bipartisan roots in the Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act, and the impact they have on people with disabilities, families, and communities across the country.
Through conversations with national and local leaders, trainee alumni, and professionals, we'll shed light on the real-world value of UCEDS, LENS, and other DD network programs. These are stories of leadership, innovation, and impact.
All right, welcome back. Producer Kat here with your intro to the episode. Today we have Kansas LEN Director Dr. Jessica Schuttler and alum Emma Watson, who share their personal journeys through the program at KU and what they gained along the way. From hands-on clinical work to deep reflection and mentorship, the Kansas LEN model supports future disability leaders through an interdisciplinary, person and family-centered approach. So they discuss the web of support that trainees carry into their professional lives, the effects on the communities in Kansas, and the lasting impact of LEN on their careers and their values. This was a wonderful conversation, and we were just so honored to be able to talk to these two, that they gave their time to our podcast. So enjoy this and share with your friends. Let's get LEN on the map.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to Accessible. We are really excited about this episode. Today we are talking with folks from the Kansas LEN, and starting with Jess Schuttler and also Emma Watson. So we are very excited to hear about the LEN and understand the impact that you all are having. So welcome to Accessible.
Thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
Well, Jess, we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about your role at the LEN and maybe how you came to be the training director at the LEN?
Sure thing. Yeah. So my name is Jess Schuttler. I serve as the training director for our LEN program. And that means I coordinate a lot of the different kinds of training experiences that those folks who are coming to our program, the things that they do while they're here training with us. That is something I really enjoy doing. As a former LEN trainee and a former trainee with the Beach Center, which was an extension of the UCED over on the Lawrence campus. I started out as a psychology practicum student way back in the aughts. I think 2008 was maybe my first experience as a LEN trainee, as a summer student, and then I came back as a doctoral fellow and completed some clinical training as well as the LEN leadership training there too.
So Jess, we have that in common because I was as you know, a trainee at the Kansas UCED and with the Beach Center even further back. But can you talk a little bit about how that experience at the UCED impacted, your career? Really?
Absolutely. So my doctoral training is in school psychology. And so I attended the school psychology doctoral program at the University of Kansas in Lawrence and had a particular interest in building parent and family professional partnerships in the early stages of my training. As a school psychologist, I saw the importance of working together across different experiences, whether that's professionals or people with what we would call lived experience, family members people with disabilities. And my advisor in the school psychology program at the time, John Eagle, encouraged me to reach out to Ann and Red Turnbull at the Beach Center related to this interest. And I thought that was pretty cool because I'd read their textbooks in my classes, and I thought, wow, I might get to go actually meet with and talk with these folks. And Ann and Red were so gracious to welcome me into their office and into their broader network of research and practice. And so I had the opportunity to do both my EDS project and then my dissertation work really related to understanding how we can build better partnerships across folks of different disciplines. And then as I joined LEND, then as more of a practicum student, learning more kind of clinical skills related to working with kids with autism, I had the opportunity to kind of expand that understanding, and I learned that term interdisciplinary is really kind of what I was doing and what I was starting to learn about, and what felt so just felt so right in terms of like how to do the work that we're trying to do. And so I started out doing kind of more kind of clinical activities, but also through my LEND experience got to really learn more about research practices that were more inclusive and more person-centered, and kind of evolving in that way. I also learned more about policy and systems and how those systems impact the work I did on the ground. And it was really exciting to me to think about opportunities that I might be able to be a change agent in that progress. And I also, all along the way, really enjoyed being a part of a person's growth process, whether that was as a clinician, as a psychologist in clinic with folks, or as a teacher working with students, as a collaborator working with people from lots of different experiences. I learned so much from everybody I came in contact with across the different disciplines in LEND. And then through a variety of the experiences that I had. So I trained there, and then I went out and worked in the schools again for a few years. And then the opportunity arose for me to come back to the Med Center and work in a more clinical role. And then a little over 7 or so years ago, I had the opportunity to become the training director for the LEND program that had really taught me so much. And so it's just really been an incredible opportunity all along the way.
What a full circle moment.
So some of our listeners probably know what a LEND is, as we have a lot of LEND trainees that listen to our podcast. But then, but let's say if someone's listening and they don't know what a LEND is, could you just give your elevator pitch, like your best quick definition of like, what is LEND?
Yes. Oh, I love this. And if there's any Kansas LEND trainees listening to this, they're going to love seeing that Jess has to give her own elevator pitch, because that's part of what we do in our training curriculum as well. So let me start with like what LEND stands for itself, right? So LEND is an acronym. So it stands for Leadership, Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities. And the way I think about it, or I'm describing it most recently as I'm trying to kind of share it with folks, is it's a disability-focused leadership program for professionals and people with disabilities and their families. And so we bring people together from a lot of different personal and professional backgrounds to learn from each other in kind of teamwork-based ways to better understand how to solve problems in our service systems, in our communities related to promoting health outcomes and just better outcomes for all people, but especially people with disabilities.
Well done. I'll applaud the elevator speech. I thought that was really well.
I think I stayed within I think I tell them 2 or 3 sentences for explaining it. So,
what kind of students or professionals, individuals come to the LEND program? Like who does it draw in?
This is one of my favorite parts about getting to have the role that I have with our LEND, is that I have just gotten the opportunity to meet some of the most passionate people who are really invested in making a difference in their communities, and who are also humble enough to know that their experience isn't the only experience. So they really come like eager to learn from each other and be curious and ask lots of questions together. So these are people who are generally pretty confident in who they are and what they know, but really open and interested in learning more and forging new paths. And like I said before, kind of solving problems. They've seen there's gaps, they've seen there's challenges, and they want to try to do something about it. And so I think that spark is that energy to really work to find a better way to do the things that we do in our field.
And I know that we have a number of employees who are actually former trainees at your Lind. And so it seems like you guys really, in addition to serving Kansas, you really serve greater Kansas City to a certain extent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I think we learned a lot from folks that have come from IHD who have then been trainees with us as well. And so it's been great to have kind of a cross the border exchange, if you will, a little bit. Yeah, we do really try to think of ourselves as, we try to think about the broader metro area. And so certainly we are Kansas Lind. We're kind of housed at Kansas University, but we are located geographically in Kansas City, Kansas. So in more of the urban center of the Kansas City metro area. And so absolutely, we have learners from both sides of the state line, and from multiple universities around the area as well. And so that has been, again, just is another way that we've had a really enriched kind of group of learners who are really cool humans to be around. So,
speaking of which, really cool human, Emma Watson, who's here with us too, who's a former Kansas Lind trainee. Emma, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role professionally or personally, and then what drew you to the Lind program?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to sound kind of like a retweet of a lot of Jess's journey, I'll be honest. But yeah, hi, I'm Emma Watson. I'm currently a school psychology PhD student at the University of Kansas. Rock Shock, I think is what you're supposed to say there. I'm from Vermont originally, so I'm new to that still. But yeah, so I have had the opportunity to kind of shift from originally the EDS program up to the PhD program at KU. And one of my favorite experiences of all has been my Lind traineeship. So I was lucky enough to be selected to be a full-time Lind trainee in 2022, 2023. And so I was actually a trainee for a full year from the fall through to the next summer. And I wish I could go back. We'll talk about that later. But my passion is actually working with families and individuals with disabilities and coordinating care and making sure that they're feeling supported, and also as well as research and hoping to kind of help bridge that gap in the research to practice gap in supporting families and individuals with disabilities as more research emerges. And I essentially, again, I want to be Jess when I grow up. That's silly to say, but
that's not why I asked her to be on this podcast, you guys. I didn't know she was going to say that.
I don't think it's silly at all. I think it shows what an impactful mentor Jess has been, which is very cool. So
yeah, absolutely. I was really fortunate. So I've always been someone, I kind of say my favorite word in the dictionary is perspective. And so I really love learning from other people. I used to say when I was in high school that if my job could be, sitting there and, asking people to tell me their life story, I would do that for my job. And in some ways I get to do that, which is really exciting. But yeah, so I've always been interested in what other people have to say and what they think and how they think and what they believe. And so that kind of is all shifted down to my finding, school psychology and bridging that gap in there. And in all of that, I actually reached out to Jess to talk more about the LEND program, just kind of not really sure what it was and trying to understand more. And I just knew within, I think, 5 minutes of chatting with Jess that this is what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. I've always been really passionate about working with others. I've been on a lot of different interdisciplinary teams, and I think it's really important that those practices continue. Especially as a school psychologist, you're working with a lot of different people in a lot of different areas of expertise, and all coordinating together to ensure that the student or all of these students, certainly that you're working with, are receiving quality care and the best supports that they can. So I was so fortunate to have a full-time traineeship with LEND, where I was able to work with other students from graduate programs like social work. I learned a lot from one of my colleagues who was in the audiology program. There's also, again, people with lived experiences who are a part of LEND, so family members of individuals with disabilities, folks with disabilities themselves, and just the opportunity to share in conversation and in conversation around things that are so important, and hear different perspectives from different folks was really something that I can't even put a value on. So I think I've drifted here a little bit, but anyway, long story short, I feel like I kind of found a home at LEND, or in the LEND model, where I've was super excited to be a part of, learning as much as I possibly could. There are so many opportunities that LEND offers. You can really kind of make your experience your own because there are so many opportunities to learn. And that's kind of why I want to go back, because there's so many more things that I can learn. So I hope someday, once I finish this degree, that I can maybe do a postdoc fellowship there. So we'll see what happens. But so finding kind of, what I really wanted to do in that model of kind of that tiered support, essentially, and hoping that I can maybe somehow get back to a role where I am supporting, the next generation of professionals moving through that journey as well.
So I guess maybe a question for both of you is what would you say is are some of the highlights of the way you're, either the didactics or the clinical rotations? What are the highlights of that people seem to get the most out of in your program?
Well, I can only really speak to my own experience. I will say that one of the most valuable parts of LEND that I found was we actually had kind of like weekly discussion groups where we would kind of meet up with folks from other disciplines and other areas and chat about kind of a common list of questions on a topic that we've been covering in class. And those were some of the most, I'm not really sure what word to say. They're, again, I think just valuable and important, and just really like resonating conversations to have with folks as we move on. And so that was something that was really, really important to me. So it wasn't necessarily a clinical aspect, but still something that was really big, because I was able to learn about others' experiences in LEND as well as, beyond. But my clinical experiences, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a couple different ones, some diagnostic clinics for developmental disabilities with Dr. Lenny Swales and Dr. Skylar Bellinger. So I worked in two different age groups of those. So kind of the younger kiddos who age 2 to, I think it's 5, and then 5 and above is kind of how that works out. And so I was trained in several different methods of assessing and looking for autism, as well as, ADHD, attention deficit, lots of different disabilities and different ways that might come about or present. And so those were incredibly valuable experiences for me as I've moved on in my own career. I've been fortunate enough to be able to complete several evaluations under the supervision of Dr. Erin Yosai at our own on-campus clinic. That's called OASIS. It's, now I'm going to forget the acronym, but it's Outcomes, Academic Interventions, and nope, that's gonna go. I'll come back to it. But
you didn't know we were gonna test you today.
Support services, maybe that's what it is. Outcomes, interventions, support services. I think the letters are mixed up there, but it's all in there. Essentially, so that's been something that I've been really fortunate to be able to do, is to be able to carry on those skills that I learned in supporting other families in the kind of greater Kansas City area, in looking at those possible diagnoses for their family, and kind of moving those processes forward. The wait list for autism diagnostic evaluations is miles long, pretty much wherever you go. And so to be able to be trained to effectively and adequately not only diagnose autism, but also be equipped with the resources to support families with recommendations, as they move on from that space with me, has been incredible. And I really owe all of that to LEND. My other clinical experience that I was fortunate to have was with behavior support clinics, actually with Dr. Shetler, Jess, and where we met with families and supported them in a lot of different ways with, anything that was, different behavior patterns and things, and helping them implement different, plans at home and things that they could do to support their themselves and their families in different spaces as well. So that was a really valuable experience too. I could talk for hours, but yeah, I think maybe Jess can talk more about other clinical experiences that are offered.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that is one of the highlights of our program, and one of the things that LENDs are charged to do. We kind of sometimes they use the term a workforce development program, that we're sort of charged with helping healthcare professionals of the future learn how to do better at providing supports and services for and with folks with developmental disabilities and their families, and particularly around autism. And so I think a lot of folks, especially from kind of backgrounds like Emma's and I's, might initially kind of come to the program to gain that additional kind of expertise in some of those more specialized types of assessments, and also understanding ongoing supports and services, because we know that for many of our kind of professional graduate level training programs in kind of healthcare services, there's not really much content at all in home programs around developmental disabilities or around autism, despite the fact that we know that 1 in 6 children are going to experience some kind of developmental delay over their life course, or 1 in 4 adults who experience disability at some point over their kind of life course too. So we really provide kind of a supplement, I think, to kind of home training programs around those clinical skill sets. But I think what then a lot of folks find once they are in LEND is that there's a whole lot other kind of highlights too. So I hear a lot from folks that our family immersion experience is a really impactful one. And shout out to Stephanie Coleman, who's our family leadership discipline coordinator and has done a ton of work for our Kansas LEND to make that what it is. And so for people who aren't as familiar with that family immersion, or sometimes some programs call it a family mentorship kind of program, which I really love that idea of what's happening too in that experience. what happens is we have families that give of their time to be partnered with a trainee from our program over the course of the 9-month training program that our long-term trainees like Emma participate in. And so the trainee and the family meet up at least once a month for about an hour each meeting, and they can do that online or they do that in person. And the trainee is there, whatever discipline they bring to the conversation. They're there to really be a kind of just a learner and a listener to the family's experience that they're meeting with. So they're really learning more firsthand about the experience of a family that is experiencing developmental disabilities of various kinds, autism frequently, but not always. And even folks who come with lived experience are partnering with a family because everybody's experience is different. And so for some of our trainees who might not have that personal lens into what life is like, it's a way for them to live life with a family for a little while. And we're super, super grateful to those families who share their time with us. And it's also served as a little bit of a kind of a recruitment tool. So we've had families who have been mentor families who have then become where they've had members of the family who have been trainees in the program, and then vice versa. We have people who kind of graduate from Lend and say, hey, we'd still love to host someone. And so that would be another program, I would say, that, or another element of the program that I hear a lot from people, and that I'm even thinking about some feedback that we got this year about the program. That was a key theme as well.
We do the evaluation for the Missouri Lend, and spend a lot of time with our trainees, and that's something they mention every year. And maybe the top thing that they get from the program is that family interaction. I don't know if they do it in the same way as the Kansas Lend, but just that experience is always very powerful.
Yeah, at each Lend, we share these kind of core elements of learning person and family-centered kind of practices. We learn about working as team members in these interdisciplinary ways. We learn about autism and developmental disabilities. But I think a cool thing about each Lend program is that we have our own spin and our own unique areas of expertise, or our own unique geography or regional considerations too. And I think the family immersion is one way that trainees that really shows through for the training experience. So that's cool that you're hearing that too.
Jess, you mentioned just that some people describe or talk about Lend as this kind of workforce professional development training program. And so from both your perspective and also yours, Emma, what the hands-on experience, the immersion program with families, the clinical experience, all the things that Lens affords you, how is that different than other graduates in in education psychology who are graduating differ from their education experience? And how does that give you, I guess, for lack of a better term, a leg up in the field, right? When you are going to go out and practice, or just from your perspective and what you've seen, how does Lend experience change that education trajectory for those students from other other disciplines before they start practicing in their field?
That's such a great question. I think many of our, especially kind of healthcare related or kind of school psychology programs, it's a very familiar concept, and perhaps not totally groundbreaking, this idea that we need to learn how to play well with others, right? Or work well with others. But I think one thing that makes Lens different is sort of the scale at which you are learning how to do that. So our Lend programs are tasked to represent at least 10 different disciplines within each long-term training cohort. And we have faculty from, I think, 12 different disciplines who are a part of our program. And so kind of that scale of sort of the number of different perspectives that you're getting in kind of one room together is really impactful. And I think that opportunity to engage in, we engage in quite a bit of self-reflection within our Lend, as well as really kind of a leadership development approach. So we're asking folks to spend a fair amount of time thinking about their professional and personal goals, what they want their kind of impact in their work to be, and the kind of steps and stages they want to go through to get there in a way that at least what I understand from what I hear from trainees is maybe in a more in-depth sort of way than they may have the opportunity to do in their home program as well. So not only are you kind of engaged in this self-reflective process to kind of examine yourself and think about what you want to do for yourself, you also then have these opportunities to connect with lots of different kinds of people who become kind of a support system to you in getting there. You come away with, I think, an additional layer of knowledge and expertise and understanding of kind of the disability experience, and especially considerations for partnering with and supporting people with autism and their families. That, like I said, is not necessarily always a focus in kind of your home training programs. And I think you also, I hope you come away with some new kind of interpersonal communication strategies for how to connect, communicate, and navigate conflict with people who, when you're working with lots of different kinds of people, it's sort of inherent that we're going to have differences in how we see things and what we think is the right next step. And so something we try to do in Lend is practice our skills at how do we navigate that, and how do we work through that, and how does that tension or that conflict sometimes help us shape into really an even better kind of outcome than we would have done so on our own. So I hope that answers that question.
A great answer. Emma, would you add to that kind of how Lend impacted you versus maybe others in your discipline that don't get that experience?
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I can't speak directly, certainly, because I don't have the same experiences as them, but I can certainly say from interacting at least with others from other programs who maybe don't have the opportunity to be a part of a Lend program. I think like a depth is the right kind of language there. You know, there's a depth of the experience and the level of connection and understanding and almost like community that you kind of build as a part of being a part of Lend. And especially, you know, in my field, that's something that's really important, to be able to work with and understand and move through those conflicts and problem solve and, you know, really work together to support, you know, the needs of the student or the family that you're working with. And so I think that Lend, you know, maybe jumped me a little bit ahead in that sort of learning process there, where I was able to really learn how to navigate some of those tougher moments, you know, and how to support folks moving through those instances as well. And I think that self-reflection piece that Jess mentioned was something that was really valuable as well. And kind of understanding, you know, what feelings, you know, these experiences brought up for me, and exploring more about that and what that means or tells me about myself and ways that I can support myself as well as I'm, you know, working with all of these people. So I think it does go back really to the interdisciplinary nature of it, but also in, you know, the field that we're in disability supports, we're really just kind of like, we all form a really big web, essentially, I guess is the way to say it. And I think that I don't like to think of it as like dominoes connected or whatever, like falling or anything. I feel like we're building a web of support. And so being able to connect with all parts of the web and be really together and work together and communicate and be on the same page is really important. And so that's something that Lend really helped facilitate in me as well. So I would definitely say that was something that I had an advantage with as being a part of a Lend. And honestly, anyone who's kind of coming up through our program, I'm not a bully about it, but I'm rather forceful in saying that you should absolutely, if you can, try to be a Lend trainee, because there's, you know, opportunities for halftime as well, and just different ways. Just having an experience working with Lend in the model and with everyone who's a part of that is really, really incredible, and something that I will definitely take away from my program that I can't say that everybody else gets. Obviously other Lend trainees do, but yeah.
I love hearing you talk about that web, Emma, because as I was thinking about the questions that we were going to be talking about today, I feel like I've probably said this to you and your cohort before, but I want I want people to feel like they gain a depth of knowledge, but I also want people to know there's no way you can know everything there is to know. But I do want you to feel like coming out of Lend that you know who to call if you've got questions or you need to figure something out. And so if you feel like you come out of Lend with your web or your connections or you're probably not calling anyone because it's it's 2025. People don't call each other, they text or they email or whatever, but that you know who you could connect with. Yeah, like who's your connection that I could reach out to related to this thing I'm dealing with in the setting where I end up. So that's really cool to hear you say that. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I love that perspective. I think it's hard sometimes to, you think you have to become an expert in all the things, but you're bringing together these different disciplines who are experts in their field or their theory or their perspective, and then they are learning other people's expertise and roles in the process, and then when's the right time to tap in.
Yeah, and learning from each other, supporting that. Yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the reasons probably the main reason that we're doing this series on Voices of the Network is just because of, there's some uncertainties going on right now in the world of Lens and USEDS. And I wonder if you guys could just offer us some perspective on what would be lost if, the Lend program is cut. It looks like Lens won't be cut, but if we were to have to reduce the number of trainees or not have the same level of service that you currently offer.
I think so. When I think about what we are doing as Lens and the role that we play in this kind of workforce pipeline, right? We are positioned in this unique place where we really help. What we're trying to do is take what we know from our research friends who are doing such good work and learning what is it that we can do to have the most impact to support people and communities, right? And then we're sort of tasked with taking that research and translating it into practice. And what are we doing in our day-to-day interactions, every clinic visit, every, project that we're doing, right? How do we kind of translate that? How do we kind of walk the talk, right? So I take that very seriously because literally I'll go from one day we're in class talking about a concept and something that and a value and a practice that we think is really important. And then the next day I'm in clinic or I'm in a meeting or I'm, at an event in the community somewhere and something comes up and then I am tasked with okay, well, what is the kind of best practice way to do this, right? And so I think that's something really valuable that our programs do and our networks do, right? Is take this kind of concept to practice kind of approach. And when I think about our various healthcare disability service system fields, we've grown so much in terms of what we've learned and how to do what we do better. And it's certainly not perfect, but we've learned so much in the 50, 60 plus years that we've been around. And I think about what would be lost if that kind of workforce development pipeline went away, is this whole, to use Emma's words, like a whole nother generation of leaders, practitioners, researchers, change makers. They're amazing humans. And so I have faith in this group of folks that I have around me, but we wouldn't have that same network and that intentional opportunity to keep growing and keep having an impact. And I worry about the outcomes that we would be, that people who utilize those services and are a part of those systems, what they'd be missing to not have that pipeline of folks trained to do better. And certainly we've got plenty of work to do, right? But I think we want to go forward and not back, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, from a personal, very selfish level, I wouldn't be me, or I wouldn't be at least the version of me that I am now without Lend. So I think that the possibility of losing Lend and all that it offers to everyone who's a part of it would be devastating on a lot of different levels. But most importantly, I think, coming back to that support web, I don't think that would exist. I think it would be a lot harder to build. I think it would be, I think applied practices would be much slower. We would not necessarily be able to, I don't know that we would be implementing, the research as quickly as we're able to now, and kind of forming these different avenues and pathways forward, like Jess said. So I think that, among many, many things that would be lost, including, the building of relationships and partnerships and understanding of, just even our human peers as we are learning and growing and as humans. I think that structured time to learn from each other that Lend offers would be sorely missed. And I hope it's not something that ever goes away. Also selfishly, because again, I want to come back, but
I should also add, so Emma and I have shared like such a great experience as with her participation in the long-term training part of our program, but she alluded to also that we have other types of learning experience. So we have medium term and short term. We offer a wide range of professional development opportunities to childcare providers, mental health care providers, families, people with disabilities across the state too. So you don't have to sign up for our long-term cohort to have impact. So I think across various training opportunities like our childcare, we have a variety of childcare training and child provider webinars where I think we've touched almost every county. So there's a childcare provider in almost every county in Kansas who's had the opportunity to participate in a webinar about how to take better care of kids in their childcare, who may or maybe make them feel more ready to take care of kids who have developmental differences, which enables their parents to be participators in the workforce and in their economies and just contribute in different ways. We also have disseminated parent-child interaction therapy to dozens and dozens of providers across community mental health centers across the state of Kansas too. And community mental health centers are places where you can't be turned away for services or supports, right? And so to know that there are now providers in those practices that know how to support kids, it's a kind of a trans-diagnostic kind of support approach. So kids with and without disabilities can benefit from that support and their parents too. And we have, I'm missing out. I mean, I'm, those are just a couple of examples of training opportunities that we provide to across the state. So not only are we workforce development of this like emerging career force, but we also impact a lot of community-based providers and folks out already doing the work who want to continue to build their competency around supporting people with autism and other developmental disabilities. And without the support that Lend provide, those opportunities would go away as well. So
we've almost like barely scraped the surface of the importance and value that the outreach that Lend programs do nationwide. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Well, it's such a great, you think of like the just service to the whole state. We talked earlier about how you are here in the greater Kansas City area. But, to think that I come from actually rural Colorado, just across the border on Kansas. And so I know what those communities out there, how little access they have to, a lot of healthcare. And so knowing that, you're able to reach all those counties out in Western Kansas is, I think, pretty amazing.
Yeah, we provide, we do an annual outreach clinic out to Western Kansas and kind of bring the clinic to our friends out west, and typically see around a dozen. I think we saw just over a dozen kiddos this spring at no cost to the family. They're in their home community, many of them with like someone from their school or from their within the kind of pediatrics clinics where they go see their primary care doctor, and sort of brought that out there. And then while we're out there, provide training to people in the community too, because they know their community best. And so we are, again, plenty of work to do. Would love the opportunity to continue to do it, but really trying to serve as many Kansans and Kansas City Metroans as we can. So
it's great work you guys do. Any of those resources, can we share them in our show notes? So that some of the like short-term training opportunities through LEND, so that people can connect with the LEND program in various ways. Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We're happy to share information about those opportunities, as well as some of the other programming that I mentioned, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you all both so much for joining us and talking a little bit. I know there's so much more we could say and learn about the Kansas LEND, but we will have links to more information if people want it. And just Jess and Emma, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us. So much fun.
Lovely to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Accessible. Accessible is hosted and produced by George Gatto, Amelia Reigard, and Catherine Toller from the University of Missouri Kansas City Institute for Human Development, which is the home of the Missouri USED. Accessible is a joint project between the Missouri USED and the Missouri LEND program, which is funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through grant number T73MC00022. Episodes of Accessible are released every 2 weeks and can be found wherever you subscribe to your podcast. Join us next time to hear more insights and ideas from leaders in the disability world.